Yeah, welcome. Thanks for joining us here today. We're really excited to talk about why I chose social work, why we all chose social work. Specifically here at the Brown School, we have a phenomenal panel to chat about their journeys and really what brought them here and why they stay in social work. Um, we have a couple of quick housekeeping notes. So just so y'all know, the webinar is being recorded. Um, Closed captions are enabled and can be activated at any time if that would be helpful. In a Zoom webinar, we can't see or hear the audience, so we can't call on raised hands. If you do have a question, please use the Q&A function, not the chat. We won't be monitoring that for questions. But we will certainly have some time at the end, or we'll try to carve out some time at the end for those questions from our audience. If we're not able to get to one of your questions, or if it's a bit off topic, then we can certainly connect offline, and always welcome you to reach out at our general email, which is brownadmissions at worcester.edu. Again, today's topic is why I chose social work. And so we do ask that we keep questions on topic. And if you do have more general questions or things that are off topic, again, reach out to us online, because this hour is, it's going to go quick. And those are all the slides that I have. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen. And then, Shanna, I'll pass it back over to you.
Thanks, Sarah. Well, the first thing that we want to do is kind of get a sense of who is joining us today. So we have a poll. We're going to launch it. And if you are attending, just let us know. Are you enrolled, attending in the fall? Are you an admitted student still making your decision? Are you waiting on your decision, still working on the application, or just here for fun, which we welcome all of the above. Everyone is welcome here. While you are filling out that poll, we want to acknowledge that March is Social Work Month, which is a large reason why we're having this topic today. So the Brown School has a ton of really cool programming that's happening this month. Yesterday we had a happy hour for the whole school in the afternoon where we were making free flower bouquets and having some snacks and drinks as a community. Today, right now, in Goldbarb Commons, right outside our admissions office, we're having another big event where there's cake and t-shirts, and our campus support dogs are there just celebrating social work. We have a suicide prevention training that's free for the whole school that's happening in a couple of weeks. We have a Hot Topic Tuesday, which the topic is, why don't social work students sign up for aging classes? That should be really fun. We do these monthly topics that are exactly what it sounds like, hot topics, fun things, interesting things that we want to dig into. We also have a tailgate later this month to celebrate the St. Louis Cardinals baseball opening day. And then we have a community-wide sound meditation and relaxation event happening at the end of the month. So lots of really cool things to celebrate social work as a field. Okay, I think everyone has answered. So awesome. We kind of have a variety of people here. So about a third of you are admitted, still making your decision. We have some folks who are enrolled, yay. Some waiting on the decision. About a third of you are just curious and here to learn more. And about 20% are still working on the application. So a variety of folks. Thank you all for answering that. Okay, so before we go over to the panel, Sarah and I will just really quickly introduce ourselves. I'm Shana Peterson, she, her pronouns. I'm an associate director in the Office of Admissions and Recruitment here at the Brown School. I also earned my MSW from the Brown School, so I'm a proud alum and staff member. And I'll pass it to you, Sarah.
Thanks, Shana. So Sarah Dexter, she, her pronouns. I'm Shana's counterpart in a lot of ways, but also an associate director in the Office of Admissions and Recruitment. I also have my MSW from a different institution, but have been proud to be at the Brown School for 10 years now. So yeah, thank you all for joining us. And then we would love to have our panelists introduce themselves. So we'll start off with our faculty members. Let's, for structure's sake, Let's start with Manasa and then Vanessa and Joshua, if that's all right.
Couldn't find my unmute button there for a second. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Manasseh Begay. I am White Mountain Apache and half Navajo. I am a licensed clinical social worker and licensed alcohol and drug abuse counselor. And I do have my MSW as well, I guess, since I have those things behind my name. And I teach here at the Brown School. I am teaching more on the clinical side of our curriculum, as well as I'm the chair of the American Indian Alaska Native Concentration. And I'm the research manager for the Catherine M. Booter Center for Native American Studies.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vanessa Fabre. I have a PhD in social work and MSW in social work, and I was a licensed clinical social worker in Missouri for a little over a decade. And my research interests are in LGBTQ plus aging, and I do work in what I call queer gerontology. At the Brown School, I teach a couple of foundation courses that you would have in your first year here: social justice and human diversity, and social economic political environment. I have also taught direct practice with older adults here at the school, and in our doctoral program, I teach interpretive methodology and social research. So I work with students at the MSW level and the PhD level.
Hello, everyone. Very happy to be here today. I'm happy that you're here or you're watching this recording back. My name is Joshua Russo. My pronouns are he and him. I am an assistant professor here at the Brown School. My area of practice is also related to LGBT. I focus on a younger population, mostly LGBTQ adolescents and young adults, around mental health, including things like suicidality, depression, anxiety. And then I also have another line of research focused on sexual health and sexuality. I am the chair of a sexual health and education specialization. So the classes that we offer around sexual health and sex ed, I work with folks in that area. And also I'm part of the Sexuality, Health, and Gender Center. So we have a group here that focuses, brings together people who are interested or doing research in those areas. And I also teach some classes on the foundation level. So I might be teaching you a human behavior class, or if you, like in 2 days, I'm leaving for Brazil to take a group of MSW students to do an immersion trip in Brazil, looking at LGBTQ issues there. So lots of ways, different ways to learn here at the Brown School. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. And then for our students who are on the call, if y'all could introduce yourselves, let's start with Sophie, Cecilia, and then Shanae.
Hello, my name is Sophie Hill. I use she, her pronouns. I'm originally from Kentucky and then did my undergrad in Minnesota. I am a first year MSW student in the mental health concentration, so looking to go on to be licensed, hopefully working with maybe like adolescent, young adult communities. And yeah, that's about me. Hi everyone, my name is Cecilia. I'm really excited to be on this panel today. Like Sophie, I'm also a first year MSW student in the mental health concentration. I am originally from North Carolina and I did my undergrad at UNC Chapel Hill. And I'm also a student ambassador in our Office of Admissions and Recruitment, which is part of why I'm here today. So thank you. Excited to be here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shanae Redden. I am a BSW MPH, which is a Master's of Public Health. And I got my Master's of Public Health from a school down the street from the Brown School. I won't name names today. I am not a traditional student. I have 30 years of experience working as a behavioral therapist, sex therapist, and now I am in children, youth, and family concentration as a first year MSW student. So it is not a full circle because the circle never gets full. It's just a new journey for me, and I'm happy to be here.
Amazing. Thank you all for that. So we're going to jump right into our questions. This question is for everyone. We know that many people come to social work from a variety of paths, and we want to know what led you here. Let's see. Vanessa, could I start with you?
Sure. I was thinking about that this morning as I was getting ready, and I have to admit that my motivation, when I look back on it, was really quite simple. I wanted to help people. I had been given a lot of opportunities in my life, and but yet there was a part of me that had this deep feeling that something was also quite wrong with the world. And I felt compelled to use the opportunities that I had been given to engage a little bit more deeply in what's wrong in the structure of our society and what promotes and facilitates injustice. So I wanted to help people. And then the best part of starting social work school as an MSW student for me was I felt like it was the beginning of my critical education. I had gone to great schools and had a good undergrad experience, but I walked through the door at my social work school, and it was the beginning of this real consciousness raising. And I moved from just wanting to help people to starting to be more reflexive about who I am in this world, and become a lot more aware of the systems that perpetuate injustice, and then also the systems that promote well-being and social justice.
Well, I wanted to introduce you all to one of our cats here as well. This is Jinx. And she's who we would call our therapy cat. I've done counseling and therapy, and if my wife as well is a therapist and a licensed clinical social worker, and she also works here at the Brown School, Dr. Pam Begay. And Jinx joins us in therapy sessions when we do therapy at home every once in a while with private patients and clients. And I found that people really enjoy her presence, and she's kind of like feels like she's drawn to certain clients, specific clients that maybe need a little bit of feline support as well. So she's somebody here needs that feline support at the same time. So welcome to Jinx. And I kind of have a longer journey into social work. I started my working career as a firefighter. Wildland firefighter, I worked out in the woods and the mountains all over the country. Really enjoyed that job. If I were to go back to a job, it would be that. And then I eventually transitioned out of that just because of the time frame it took. And I went into law enforcement for a period of time. But I really wanted to get more into direct relationship with people and in a different way to help create change on an individual level. And my wife, who was in social work, it was a very easy transition to move into social work. And really the goal was always to start a private practice and go to private practice. Teaching was not necessarily a part of the gig, even though it was something that we both had done in our previous employments. But the private practice was the main pull. And like I said, we still do private practice, just a lot less. But it was really wanting to help people on an individual level. And one of my goals has always been to help Native American communities and Native American people. And so that's still definitely a part of my practice and a part of what I do, both inside the Brown School and outside the Brown School as well.
Anyone can jump in.
I'll jump in as a student. When I was in undergrad, I did not know what I wanted to do. And I tried everything and nothing fit well with me. So I thought I was going to be a doctor. I thought I was going to be a teacher, ended up being a teacher. That's a long story for another conversation. I thought I was going to be an occupational therapist. I just knew that I wanted to serve my community. And I fell upon social work. So I became a social worker and still didn't know what social workers did. And then I started interning as I was taking classes. And I was like, social workers can do anything. You can be a therapist, you can be a teacher, you can do sound, you can do this, you can do that. And I was like, this fits my personality. And after that, I decided to advance my studies. But I'm once a social worker, you're always a social worker. You can touch anything in social work. You can touch relationships. You can touch group therapy, a one-on-one therapy, become a practitioner. You can work in hospitals. I worked in the hospitals for a while. At that time, I couldn't handle the pressure of being in the ER, but I did it. And it gave me an opportunity to discover myself, to find myself, and to really walk in my purpose and enjoy what I was doing. I left social work. Then we didn't have an understanding of self-care. I went into corporate America and I was like, I'm still a social worker. I'm going back. And that's what led me here.
I can oh, do you want to go, Sophie?
You go.
Okay. Um, so when I was an undergrad, I majored in psychology, and so I kind of always knew that I wanted to work with people in some type of clinical setting just because that's what I was exposed to. And then I took a class during my junior year where my professor helped us explore like different careers you could go into with a psychology background. And that's when I learned what an MSW was really for the first time. And that spoke to me so much more than going into strictly psychology. Just because I'm not as much of a research person, I'm more of a people person. And I just liked how holistic social work is. And I feel like I didn't really see those same values in other programs. And so that's what brought me here. So I'm excited to see where it goes.
I can jump in. I kind of like Shanae did not know at all what I wanted to do in undergrad. I got there and I really had no clue other than the fact that I was interested in people. I think that is sort of a result of my mom, who very much picked one thing and stuck to it. The way she describes it, as she was sort of aware of maybe 10 possible careers and that she could probably do 5 of those as a woman. And she picked being a teacher and loved it, but always felt kind of limited by that choice. So I really wanted to go into something that I knew could grow with me, that I could expand into. For a while, I thought I wanted to be a journalist. I really liked the idea of finding new ways of being, getting to know people on a deep level, and then finding the language that would express that in a way that felt accurate and emotional. And then I realized I probably didn't want to have my whole job be like making a product, but it really led to this love of language. And I think in my like pursuit of wanting to be a therapist, there's still such like a deep need to articulate the invisible things that we experience, and that I'm still like thinking in my clinical practice, it'll be so important to think about the language we use, find ways to be expressive, and to make living feel more visible and not like reduced and flattened through the things that we don't talk about. So that's really what drew me to wanting to do therapy. And then, yeah, like the MSW, it opens the world to therapy, but my love of language has no bounds. And whatever I choose to do, it will be important and totally aligns with the social work need to make the world feel more safe.
Yeah, those are really beautiful ways that you all got here. I'll try to be quick. I will say that when I went to undergrad, I did know what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a lawyer. And because pre-law is not really a thing, I, for fun, thought I would do psychology, like Cecilia, and learn so much about why do people do the things that we do? Like what causes us to think these ways? What causes us to act these, certain ways? And I was just fascinated by that. And I was exposed to a couple of different research labs while I was there in that program, and thought, research is pretty cool. Like, I like the idea of generating new knowledge and like learning and sharing that information. So after finishing that up, I was like, okay, law, someone else can do law. Like, other people are doing that. They figured it out. And then I worked for a few years after undergrad and was doing work in like human services, working at a place that was mostly focused on HIV prevention, and non-medical care, but care, like more holistic care for people who were, living with HIV and things like that. Because I was very interested in sexual health. And, I worked for someone who was like a powerhouse. She'd been a PhD for over 25 years, like doing the work, and really like exposed me and inspired me to want to do research. So I was like, okay, I want to do research. I'm a psychologist, so I have to do social psychology. So I applied to one school. I should say I'm a first generation college student, first generation grad student. So like I didn't know what I was doing necessarily. Applied to one school, wrote a pretty okay letter, got rejected, of course. And was like, okay, took that extra year to really think through the process. And I was like, I kind of backed into social work. I said, who's doing the research that is really driving the things that I care about? And I found some papers, and I found some folks who were writing those papers. And I looked at their credentials on the papers, and I was like, MSW. I was like, what is that? Like, tell me more. So then I reached out to them because I just assumed we could do that. And I said, hey, like, what's your story? What's going on? I was in LA. Luckily, two of them were in LA, and I met up with them. And they kind of just like explained to me how what I was actually looking for the whole time was social work. And from then on, I did an MSW, went to a PhD program, which got me here. And the MSW was the perfect foundation because like I knew I didn't know enough about I knew the research was important, but I didn't really have at that point the conceptualization of like what we needed to be like, what I think a social work researcher needs to be thinking about when we do research with people. And I really value that foundation that I got for that. Even though it wasn't at a school as good as the Brown School, but we could talk more about that.
I love it. I feel like we could have a whole info session with each one of you alone and hear more about like your background and your journey. And I'm hearing so many like similar themes, but also like all very different too. So our next question is just for maybe like two folks, like, was there a moment, and some of you have shared this already, but was there a moment, whether it was in the classroom, your field experience, working professionally, when it just really clicked for you that this was the right field, you're in the right field?
I can answer that. With what's going on in the world today, as we're sitting in classes, and Sophie and Cecilia could probably attest to it, we've faced many challenges as citizens or just humans. And the rite of passage to being a good social worker is to give of yourself, but also take care of yourself. And we've had so many instances that we have had to be challenged with that, whether it's school load, family, or just what's going on in the world today. And this may be answering another question on top of that, but we've learned that together how to stand up and advocate for those who can't advocate for themselves. So in the midst of being in class, I had an aha moment because we are learning about social justice and being able to speak up for one another and walking in your truth. So as I'm a student, I made the right decision to be at Brown, to be a MSW, to do it at this time in my life with no question and not being apologetic about the work that we're doing. We learned a lot about micro, macro, and meso. And I am on my way to DC for a class, and we're doing some legislative meetings, and I'm going to make sure I say what we've been advocating for at the Brown School. And it just gives you the opportunity to really make a difference. So I constantly have those aha moments while I'm sitting in my classrooms at the Brown School.
could share briefly that I chose social work in my mid-20s and was just in my first year when I came out as queer to myself, to my family, to others, and my whole world changed. It was painful, it was joyful, and that was the beginning of a new kind of life for me. And when that happened for me, that was my moment when I realized the best place I could be is social work. Because from that moment on, I said I came into this wanting to help people, but I wanted to help others. And that was a moment for me when I began to dig deeper and learn more about people like me and people who shared things in common with me and people who faced injustices that I didn't face. And so being in social work for me at that time, and still is to this day, a way for me to look inward and stay committed to people in my community that I care about. And so for me, bridging the personal and the professional is what keeps me here as well. You had mentioned that earlier. Why did we pick it and why are we still here? Because I feel a deep commitment to my community. And that's personally fulfilling. And that helps a little with the self-care piece that Shanae had mentioned as well, that at the end of the day, I want to have done something for my people and to feel like I made a contribution in the here and now, but hopefully something that can be helpful to the future generation as well.
Thanks, Vanessa and Shanae. Really personal. I think social work can be so personal for so many of us. So thank you for sharing that.
I'm gonna add a little bit to that, and I would say I didn't choose social work in some ways. I would say social work chose me, and really the counseling and therapy and human interaction was a big part of it. Before I was even in this field, it was like a very common thing for people to just come up and start talking to me and telling me about their problems and their issues that they were going through. People I didn't even know or have a relationship. I've never seen this person before. And they just come up to me and saying hey, I'm having a rough day. Can you help me out? And not asking for anything, but just wanting to talk. And that was just such a common thing for me from a young age. And I think it just took me a long time to realize I guess I just need to finally jump in and do this thing. And I'm glad I did, because it is, I think the thing about social work, and I'm a clinician at heart, and I'll always be a clinician, but it allows you to access so many other areas of working with individuals and people across so many facets that you don't always get in other fields. And I'm glad I came to do an MSW as opposed to some other form of license or way to get into counseling, because of just the many areas that I can also work into, and never really plan on working in all these different areas and all these different programs out there. But it has given me the opportunity to bring a lot of my background and history into this field, and to do the work that I really enjoy doing.
Thank you so much. I think that's a really fantastic segue into our next question. You're touching on how social work is such a broad field. There's this breadth to it, and just a lot of potential to explore. And it also gives a potential framework to work from as you're working in different areas. But this question is for Sophie, Cecilia, and Shanae. How has social work changed the way you see the world or engage in your community? How has it kind of changed the way that you think and act? I'll start with Sophie.
Yeah. Oh, cat stuck in my throat. I feel like I now look at the world and feel like there should be a social worker probably in every building, maybe in every room, every nook and cranny, if we can fit them there too. One of my favorite quotes. It's from a song, and it's there's no truth in me, there's no truth in you, the truth is between. It's a Smog song, and to me it really just points to the fact that like we make meaning by being with each other. And as like a girl who has been growing up in this world, I fear sometimes that we are getting further and further away from each other. I think our social media is becoming more media than social. I think that our the political landscape we are living in is making us not see each other for the people that we are. And so it really just amazes me that there is a whole field dedicated to finding that truth that exists in between us, and that we cannot do this alone. We cannot like be in a room alone and find meaning. So that's a very big picture answer, but I feel like it has just really raised my attention to how many spaces we are not actively building community. We are not actively trying to create empathy, and we're not living in a world right now where if we don't actively do that, it's just going to appear. So at every level, I think it is important that we continue to find the truth that exists in between us. Yeah. What a beautiful answer, Sophie. I think that social work has definitely changed a lot of the ways that I just view the world and the way that I interact with people. I think that, not that I wasn't doing it before, but I think that now more than ever, when I interact with other people, I try to be very mindful and very self-aware of like where I'm coming from, where they're coming from, the fact that the people that I interact with are coming from a variety of experiences, and everyone has their own baggage that they're carrying, and that I may not always be able to understand that, but I can approach them with empathy and just being a listening ear. And I feel like that's something I've definitely been able to hone in on at my practicum this semester. I'm working with children and families who have experienced some kind of significant death in their life. And so just understanding how everyone's story is different, and the things that they share, the things that they don't share, there are a variety of reasons for that. And so just offering a space that's welcoming, and kind of checking myself before I enter that space, just constantly being mindful of that.
And to piggyback off of Sophie and Cecilia, it has given me an expanded view of what diversity, equity, and inclusion is. And I've honed into that part of me. I'm a Black woman, and I advocate for diversity all the time from my experience, but from being in this school, being with my peers, Sophie and Cecilia, we have a lot of classes together, being in the practicum space, it has expanded me to really be an advocate for change and for diversity and for respecting that the diversity of my peers. Not everyone is the same. No one is the same. And I had to grow up in this space. I came from a different background, coming back into being being a student at the age that I am. I respect my peers, not because of age or color or sex or gender or whatever they have decided their path is. I am open to learn, I'm open to receive, and I'm in an honest and sometimes it's brutally honest space of I don't know everything. And so to be a good student, you have to be a good teacher. And to be a good teacher, you have to be a good student. And it's a constant learning in this space that we're in.
Thanks, Shanae. Oh, just super interesting answers from all three of you. I just love hearing like what you're learning in the classroom, and yeah, just how your world views are shifting. This next question is again open to anyone, maybe two or three folks, a little more tangible. So can you tell us about a skill from your MSW that you use most often in your work today?
And I don't have my MSW, so can we ask the professors the question?
Absolutely.
This is gonna sound kind of textbooky and also my voice just always sounds sarcastic. If you're one of my students, you come to learn that. But I still think back to like workshops that I did on like motivational interviewing and CBT, and I think about I use that in like day-to-day conversations. When like Manasseh, like people do have always, I didn't realize social work was choosing me, but people would always come to me and ask me questions and want to talk about stuff. And want to move forward in some certain way. And so like being able to practice like actual motivational interviewing in a conversation with like friends and family is really interesting. And then also recognizing things that I'm learning about like cognitive behavioral therapy and like trying to match a thought to a behavior, and understand it again, because I care about like, why do people do certain things? Being able to see that and appreciate that and empathize with like, maybe my thought wouldn't lead to that behavior, but understanding how like other people's thoughts and behaviors affect each other. And being able to like empathize and understand them in a way that I wouldn't have been able to before.
Was thinking about the framing of skills, and sometimes I think we imagine a skill as something that we are physically doing, asking a question, engaging in some way, writing a policy brief. But now that it's been 20 years since I did my MSW, I think the biggest thing that the biggest skill that I got in my MSW program was learning how to think critically and being introduced to critical theory and critical perspectives. It's the first time I was introduced to critical race theory, decolonizing perspectives, queer theory. I didn't have exposure to theories that challenge taken for granted aspects of society. I just had never been exposed to that. And so when I think about my social work practice, how it's evolved, first it was being trained as a psychotherapist, running support groups, doing health promotion, and moving into a PhD track and doing research and teaching. The skill is thinking. And that's one thing I try to do in my classes, is not teach students what to say, but how they might think about a particular issue. And so that's carried through for me, that trying to challenge myself to just pause and ask a critical question about a scenario or about some aspect of society that we take for granted and we think is just normal. So it's a great question, and I appreciate the opportunity to think about that.
I agree. It's a good question. It was a hard one for me when like in conceptualizing it, because I could say that there's just so many things that I've brought from my education into practice. And I immediately want to go to my clinical side of what I've learned. But in reality, I use a lot of research-based tools that were taught to me within my MSW program on a very regular basis. Just reading through research articles on a fairly regular basis is kind of feel like becomes a part of my job and a part of ensuring what I teach and what I share has efficacy behind it, as well as I'm like looking at new grants and new research that we want to do and participate in. And how do I make sure that research is engaged in that process and that I'm doing things in a very mindful way? And I've never really imagined that I'd be using as much research as I am doing in my work, but I am, and I'm using it on a very, very regular basis. And I think that it's interesting to me. Like sometimes I wish I just paid a slight bit more attention maybe back then. Because I still nowadays I'm looking things up just to make sure that I'm remembering things properly sometimes and making sure that I'm reading things right. So I think I pull from that a lot more. Some of the other stuff I feel like has become second nature when it comes to the clinical side of things, but that is something that I use regularly.
Thank you all for sharing that. Oh, shit. I feel like we had three very different responses, but I'm hearing this through line of like this like deep intentionality and being like very present in the work that you're doing, which from my perspective is very important for social work. This next question is for the three of you again. What does the field of social work need most right now? And why is this moment in time a good time to be entering the field of social work? Shanae touched on this a little bit, but I would love if y'all could expand on that from perspective.
I'll kick this one off again. I think one thing about social work that I really think about compared to other fields that are similar is we have this person and environment framework where we really try to engage the person on all different levels. And I think that a lot of times we silo people out to not even just to an individual, but to a part of an individual. And let's look at their brain, or let's look at their body, or let's look at something else. And don't really think about all who that person is within their external world and within the environment that they live in. And I think that's something that is so needed that gets overlooked in a lot of people out there because they don't see all the aspects, or else they look at the environment altogether and forget about the people that are there. And so I think that if we could take a look at all those relationships that go on within an individual, within their community, becomes so important. That's something that we need to seek a lot more of, and that needs, and I think it's like one of the hallmarks of social work that we have to like intentionally engage that person in all these different areas and elements. That hopefully that continues to be something that's always a part of what we teach and learn, to remember to engage in that way and not miss out on all these different parts of a human.
I'll piggyback off that in thinking of person and environment, because we serve people, we work with folks in social work in some way. The world feels like it's changing so fast and so frequently and in so many areas at once. Like just two of the things that I care about. One is for fun. I really am interested in AI for lots of different reasons. But of course, it feels like there's nobody in charge of like what is allowed to happen with it. So I think certainly there will be lots of different consequences. Some of them might be great, and some of them there's a real potential for a lot of damage. And so social workers can play a number of roles with that. I am trying to make it a point to be in places where there's conversations about like what does safety look like, what do guardrails look like, how can we use AI ethically to benefit all people, not just some people. And so like I think social work has a role in being part of those conversations. I'm also seeing that the populations that I work with all over the world, and especially in the United States, where things were looking one way, are under attack, and rights are being stripped away. People are randomly losing their driver's license, right? Like things that we could have never anticipated, would have probably not wanted to anticipate. Maybe we could have, but didn't really see as real possibilities. Things are happening, right? So more people are needing social workers in lots of different ways, and social workers have a place in really driving some of the change that we want, and not just letting things sort of happen to us and to the communities that we care about.
This is a little bit of what social work can do and should do, in my opinion. I do think we have we have the opportunity to, we see micro issues very well. We do have a lot of understanding of coping and adapting and helping people work through problematic behaviors. And we also understand, since the roots of our profession, the negative effects of rapid industrialization, wealth inequality, those kinds of things. And so we have some of that within the field. And I think right now, as we see geopolitics changing, although some of this has happened before, as we see this extreme and dangerous shift in geopolitics at the moment, I think social work could build upon our strength, and that we've had micro and macro perspectives in our profession. I think we could build, and we're doing this, people at the Brown School are doing this, building an even stronger conceptualization of what micro and macro mean together. And that means training people to do psychotherapy in ways that incorporate structural perspectives. And that means helping people who are doing more policy level advocacy and work, that they're also understanding the intrapsychological aspects of oppression and political structure in society. So I think social work is well poised to do that, bring the micro and macro together. And I think this is a critical moment in history when the profession could contribute more of that, and develop an even stronger perspective that brings us together.
Thank you all. Lots to dig into there for sure. We actually only have 10 minutes left. So I'm going to go ahead and ask the last question because I think it will take a little bit of time. And we'd like to ask it to all of you. So we have several attendees who are still making their decision about the Brown School, potentially people who are still making their decision about even pursuing an MSW. And some of you have touched on this. Actually, all of you have touched on why you chose social work specifically. But for someone who is maybe watching this and is curious, but still unsure about pursuing an MSW, and maybe specifically even an MSW at the Brown School, what would you tell them? What advice would you offer? What perspective would you offer for someone who's curious but still unsure about the MSW at the Brown School?
I can start. I applied to several schools and got accepted into several schools. And then I came on, it was a weekend, admissions weekend that was offered. And that sealed the deal for me because it was truly an open door experience. There were professors there, the dean was there, everyone was willing to guide, help, and just participate in your decision and in the need for what your decision meant to you. So for me, and then I got on campus, and one of my professors in the first semester walked me through everything. My goal is to continue on and get a PhD. So there's so many resources that were handed to me on how to get a PhD, how to get it paid for, what to do when you're getting your MSW to go to the next level. I'm also interested in policy, so I'm learning from my professors. You should talk to this professor. Joshua, somebody already told me I should talk to you about some things because I'm doing some doula trainings and lactation education. So it is such a open door, and it's such a big ladder to step on to take you and catapult you to so many different spaces on this journey we call life. I do sound therapy now, and now I'm a practitioner. So I'm going to be talking to you soon and working with the cat. So anyway, it's just a plethora of information, resources, and guidance. I have gone to other schools for undergrad and another master's, and it just didn't have the same level of care for me as a student when I was there, and provided so many doors that are being opened for me. So WashU Brown School is the #1 school, no matter where you see it saying other things, this is a #1 school, and I'm happy that I made the decision.
I'm gonna kind of connect on what Shanae said. Those were great. I think that definitely use the resources that are there when you're deciding which MSW program you want to pursue, especially if you're looking at the Brown School specifically. I think that there are so many great opportunities to get connected with the campus here. I was able to come and visit the campus, and I also came to Admitted Students Weekend, and that was definitely very helpful in me making my decision to come here, just because I found the community aspect in just the level of like how personal it felt. I didn't feel that way when I was applying to other MSW programs. So definitely take advantage of those resources if you can, take advantage of those opportunities to come and see it for yourself in person when you're making that decision, because it is a big decision and it's very intimidating, and it's a lot to think about. I mean, I moved to come to school here, so there was a lot to consider, but definitely, take those opportunities, like everything Shanae was talking about.
I can jump in. I do feel like I think both me and Cecilia went straight from undergrad to grad school, and I know that's definitely like a population of people who come to admissions. Like you're going straight from undergrad into more school. And I think what's so nice about that is that it can be so intentional of like, wow, gosh, I've been in school my entire life. Like I was born, and then my first memory, like this has been a lot of school. But this is sort of an opportunity. This was my first time where I really felt like I got to be so much more intentional and in control of what I wanted to learn. This was an opportunity not just to grow as a professional and learn all these practical skills, but to like grow as a human being. So I guess I would just say, like, think of this not just as an opportunity for you to grow as a professional, but yeah, I'm really restating myself. But if you view it as an opportunity for you to personally expand, not just to learn, memorize a bunch of things, but to change how you think, it makes the learning so much more exciting. It gives you so much more investment in the things you're learning when you think about it not just as memorizing a bunch of things and then creating a product. That's like sort of the beauty of social work, is that like in order to be a good practitioner, in order to be a good lobbyist, like you need to really understand and connect with the work you're doing. It's not just a matter of doing the job. There has to be meaning there. And what an amazing field to be a part of in that way.
I'm going to speak from somebody like Sarah over here who also didn't go to Wash U in the Brown School. I definitely wish I did. If I had the opportunity, I think it would have been amazing to be able to have gone to school here. The program I feel is phenomenal, and the instructors are, I don't want to use the word engaging, but they really care about what they do and what they talk about and what they teach. And they put a lot of effort into the product that they put out. And in reality, the product is not our curriculum. The product is our students. And we really want the best for our students and try to put into our students the things that are of value and of value for the field of social work. So I think that if you're on the fence about it, you shouldn't be, because this is the place for you to be.
I also wish I would have come here. To be honest, I would have been too intimidated to apply to the Brown School, I think, originally. And I'm glad, and now I understand, because I've come here, right? I'm here, and I know the people who work here, I know the people who know our students. And I do kind of wish that I would have come here. What keeps me here is that I love the people that I get to work with every day, including like students, staff, faculty, everybody, because I'm just surrounded by people who care about other people, who care about the work that they're doing. So they want their work to be good because they know their work affects other people. And I don't see that you don't necessarily get that everywhere you go. But I will say, to answer some people's questions about like, if, what are options for clinical versus what are options for non-clinical, I will say our school does a really good job of having different options in those areas. So like if you want to be a clinical practitioner and you want like deep mental health training, definitely we have opportunities for that. There's also a bunch of other stuff that people can focus on. If you want to focus on more policy, or you want to, maybe you see yourself in politics in one day, and MSW is probably a great start for that. Or even if you want to work in an organization, but you want to make sure that that organization is good to its people, we have lots of stuff around leadership. And even if you're not like a formal leader or manager, just getting leadership training. We have classes in that too. That's just a very light level. There's other stuff too, but certainly there are career paths in multiple directions. It's not just one or the other. Our school's pretty good about coverage.
I wasn't sure if we were allowed to do little heart emojis, but I wanted to just keep like flying my hearts up when everyone was talking just now. And I'll add to what everyone shared, and say that I think there are some real opportunities personally and professionally in being in St. Louis. And, for me, I didn't do my MSW and PhD here, but where I did do that was very, very, very important for my growth as a human being, my human development. The environment was important to me there. And St. Louis offers one's affordability that a lot of other places don't, which allows you, if in a place that's more affordable, is to maybe not have to work as much while you're taking these awesome classes here. There's just a lot that the Brown School offers. We're now able to offer people paid practicums. And so that's just that's a really big deal to people. I took out a lot of loans to go to school. So, it's just, that sounds like just a money thing, but it enhances your life and it enhances your experience in grad school. And, St. Louis also, in kind of tragic ways, it embodies a lot of injustice in American society, which means there's an opportunity here to engage in community and have where you live and who you're friends with and the things you're doing at school all be part of engaging in social justice work. So it has that affordability piece, and it has a really great place to learn and engage and put what you're learning in school into practice in your life. So heart emojis to all of you, though. Everyone gave such great answers.
Love it. Thank you all so much. We work in admissions, and obviously we think the Brown School is great and we want everyone to come here, but hopefully folks can really sense like the sincerity of everyone on this panel. We didn't tell them to say all this. So I feel like, there's such a great, rich community here of people who just really care, students and faculty, and care as people at the Brown School and people in St. Louis too. So thank you all for that great advice. I'll pass it back to Sarah just to end.
Yeah, so thank you all again for just this amazing conversation. We are at time, we're just a few minutes over. So I want to remind folks who are our prospective students, our people who are working on their applications. March 1st was our last application, was our most recent application deadline. We are still accepting applications for domestic students on a rolling basis. We'll be accepting applications through June 1st. So if you haven't got that application in, we're still accepting for our domestic folks and would love to welcome you should you be interested. We do have another info session coming up in 2 weeks for our folks who are interested in social policy. So if you're deciding between an MSW or maybe an MSP, come join us for that. We would love to talk more about social policy specifically. And then for our students who are admitted, we will be having Admitted Students Weekend next month, April 10th and 11th. A couple folks mentioned that on this meeting, on this info session. We would love to see you there. It is just a phenomenal way to really get to know the folks on the screen and so many other people. It's a great time to start making those connections that you can continue to build on during your time here as a student. So thank you all for being here. I know we weren't able to get to some of those questions live. Please feel free to reach out to us through Brown Admissions or your admissions rep, and we'd be happy to touch base with you a little more personally. So thank you all again, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Happy Social Work Month. Have a great afternoon. Thank you all.
Everyone.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye.